Okay, hi. So, yeah, what are we today? It's Wednesday. We're doing like a hatha vinyasa style flow. And I wanted to talk a little bit about Ahisma. And it's probably a word that you have heard or have talked about in the yoga studio. And if it's new to you, Ahisma means nonviolence. And it is part of the eightfold path to enlightenment, according to the Yoga Sutra, which is a whole other conversation. But there's 8 limbs to like hatha yoga, and hatha yoga is what we practice together. And the first limb, like the first step, so it's these 8 steps to enlightenment. That's 8. Is the Yamas. Sorry, had a moment there. It's the Yamas. And there's the Yamas and the Niyamas are the first like 2 steps, and there's 5 Yamas and 5 Niyamas. So the first, I know that's like a lot of steps, right? Probably giving you too much information. The first of the Yamas is Ahisma, nonviolence. And we could get really deep into that conversation about what that means and like to translate what nonviolence is. Some people, believe and take Ahisma as far as being completely vegan. So not hurting animals for consumption and go down that path. We're not going to go so deep today. I want to talk about Ahisma as the way that you treat yourself and the way that you treat others. So violence can seem like such a violent word, I know, and we talk about this a lot in classes with me, is how are you speaking to yourself? How are you approaching a situation? How are you, what is your attitude? What are you embodying when you're on the mat, when you're faced with challenge, when you're in a long hold? And I know sometimes it can be like every other class, this is what we're talking about, but it's important. It's important that the way you speak to yourself is with kindness, that you speak to yourself with coming from a place of love, because eventually it's how you're going to be speaking to other people. And you're probably already speaking to other people with love and with kindness. And I'm sure most of you are. But it starts with you. You know, Gandhi said, be the change you want to see in the world. And you got to change yourself first. So even these little tiny thoughts that creep in, like when you're holding chair pose later and your knees hurt and your glutes hurt and you're like, Jesus, I hate this pose. Stop yourself. Yeah, it might not feel great in the moment, but instead of approaching it with, when are we going to be done? Approach it with, I'm so grateful that my body can hold me in this pose. And you'll see that the more you start to catch yourself on the mat, the more that you start to notice or observe these little, I like to call them isms, these little things about yourself that maybe you're a little harsh on yourself, or maybe, your expectations of yourself are really high. I know this isn't violence, like physical violence or gore violence, but this is violence mentally and emotionally towards yourself. So when you can start to observe these things and start to recognize these little things that creep into the mind and that pop up when you're on the yoga mat, I guarantee you can fact check me. It's been proven. You can call me in 6 months and tell me that you've had an aha moment. But I promise you that eventually, if it's not already happening, you're gonna start to react this way off of the mat. When you find yourself in an uncomfortable situation with another person or in traffic, instead of getting frustrated and going to that violent thought process, you're gonna be like, it's just traffic. It's no big deal. I can hear the rest of my favorite song that's playing on the radio. So I know it sounds like a lot of work, and I know that I talk about this a lot, but it's important. And it's important that you speak to yourself with kindness. It's important that you treat people with kindness. And if you can't treat yourself that way, then there's no way you can treat somebody else with kindness. So Ahisma is our theme today, nonviolence. Nonviolence towards yourself, nonviolence towards others. You can let your mind go wild with this in your practice today with what Ahisma means to you. I'm just asking that when you find yourself having some aggression in your thoughts or violence in your thoughts or frustration in your thoughts, that you acknowledge that that's what you're having and you consciously try and shift that. Ahisma, nonviolence. So with that said, let's come to the mat.